With the announcement of this new Drake and 21 Savage collab, it's got me thinking about every collab album that I've ever wanted, every collab album that I still think is possible, and every collab album that I think has been a success story up until this point. This video is being recorded upon the announcement of Drake and 21 Savage's new collab album, Hurt Loss. Crazy name. I expect some crazy content, some cringe, but some cringe that I hope is enjoyable. And I would love for y'all to chime in and tell me what you think this record will be, and I also want you to leave a comment below and let me know if you could pick 2 artists to make a collab record, collab mixtape, even a collab song, who you would want to hear together. But before we do that, a word from our sponsor. Got a question. What are you listening to this video with? Don't answer that. You should be ashamed of yourself. These are the Raycon earbuds. I'm wearing them right now. Are you? Probably not. They even come with their own charging case and are so comfortable that it's easy to forget you're wearing them. Now, me personally, I like to use them for streaming. Y'all know I've had trouble using other brands of earbuds and headphones. Not only are these comfortable enough to forget you even have them in your ear, they last long. That's right, these are not the Minutemen of earbuds. Talking 8 hours of playtime, over 30+ hours of battery life. That's more than enough time to listen to your favorite album, get through your favorite podcast, or even listen to an audiobook for all the nerds out there. All right, I'm a nerd too, but I'm just saying. The earbuds tap features are really convenient and prevent you from having to go to the device for every little thing. For instance, tapping the left or right earbud twice plays or pauses the song you're listening to. 3 taps of the left earbud will take you to the previous song, while 3 taps of the right earbud will take you to the next one. The noise isolation feature makes you feel like you're in your own world. Like I literally hear nothing going on around me right now. If you still want to listen to your favorite podcasts and or your favorite albums, but hear what's going on around you, you can return to awareness mode by simply holding the right earbud for 3 seconds. And to go back into noise isolation mode, you hold the left one for 3 seconds. They're incredibly comfortable, incredibly discreet, but most of all, they're incredibly affordable. So to get a pair yourself, simply go to the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/ShawnC to get 15% off your purchase. Consider your ears more with Raycon. Now, there are collab albums between artists that I would love to see in the future that haven't happened yet that I think could easily be on the horizon. For example, Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia are slated to be releasing a collab album between the two of them, just don't have a release date yet. Like, there are collab records between artists that I think would make so much sense. And then there are collab albums that are unwritten collab albums, if it makes any sense. Meaning a collab album that has had such a heavy hand from another artist. People recognize and acknowledge that person's influence and hand on that body of work, but no one ever says it's a collab album. Like Take Care, which is basically a collab from The Weeknd and Drake. Or A Written Testimony, which is basically a Jay Electronica album featuring Jay-Z. The Chronic is a big example of a collab record that isn't technically a collab record. An album that you basically know wouldn't be the same without this other person's unwritten influence, if it makes sense. Now, there are albums that we can categorize as that, but I guess for the premise of this video, I will be focusing more so on records that I think have been great success stories, regardless of whether I've liked them or not. Example, What a Time to Be Alive. Was never a big fan of this album, but I can't deny the noise that it made. I can't deny the hits that it had. The shock and surprise on people's face seeing 2 rap juggernauts essentially join forces for 10 tracks. Not only did this record have tons of hits, but they collabed at a time where they were their biggest, most relevant, and most importantly, at their best. The timing for this record to release was perfect. Similarly, Watch the Throne's timing was just as impeccable, coming from 2 artists that were already beyond their prime when it comes to rapping, and showed that some of the biggest names in hip-hop weren't there just because they were big artists. Didn't just make it to this stage off of being overrated or coasting by just off the back of their name. While this album wasn't very ambitious, it left fans immediately waiting for a sequel. One of the best examples of a successful collab album is easily Without Warning. Upon first impressions of this album, I was afraid that it wouldn't age the best, with my favorite tracks being My Chopper Hate Niggas and Ric Flair Drip. These are 2 records that feature independent performances from 21 Savage and Offset. No 21 feature on Ric Flair Drip and no Offset feature on My Chopper Hate Niggas. And these being my favorite cuts on the record, I just didn't want it to be another one of those 2 artists coming together to do an album, but separately on the same album type of albums, if that makes sense. But the more and more I listened to Without Warning, the more and more I felt this album was tailor-made to the 2 of them, irrespective of their approach to the track. There isn't a single cut here that features 21 and Offset that I feel either one of them does awkward performances on. Either one of them doesn't bring what makes them good to the track independent from one another. And I think Metro Boomin does an incredible job of tailor-making tracks that work for the both of them without either one of them having to be awkward on the track to fit a particular vibe that's trying to be forced. 21's allowed to be 21, Offset is allowed to be Offset, and the track works completely fine with no changes needed whatsoever. I think I like this album even more in the context of 21 Savage's discography, because it would seem that he would go on to build on top of this already dark and nocturnal vibe that was kind of cemented within Without Warning on Savage Mode 2, using these elements of horrorcore, hip-hop, and trap all in one. I can only hope that Offset does the same with time. I also would rather maintain this list and keep it geared toward 2 rappers or 2 artists that are collaborating for an album, rather than trying to acknowledge artist and producer. I think that's most albums in general, that we could credit to half of the success of it being geared toward the producer, unless the entire album is self-produced by the artist himself. It just feels like a redundant thing to do. Obviously, most records wouldn't be as successful without the person producing it. And before you say it, no, I'm not forgetting about Black Star. No, I'm not forgetting about any record that you could probably throw me from Outkast. And while there's no denying that these records are amazing, what makes these albums so great for me personally is the rap quality of them. And I know for a majority of the records that I would like to see between people who I'm a fan of today don't necessarily encompass how great their rapping ability is. We're talking more so about how well they harmonize, their melodies, how well they use their voice, musicality. And so in light of that, I want to list 5 of my own dream collab albums. And the first one would have to be a collab album between JPEG Mafia and FKA Twigs. Separately, I think these artists make incredible music on their own, and I would love to see the world that they could create if they came together. I think Twigs' voice is far too angelic and at moments almost alien-esque. I give Jessica Pratt this praise too whenever I listen to Quiet Signs, that her vocals sometimes act as a cloud to carry you through the track, or she comes off as this mystical goddess-like figure whenever she's singing on the cut. And I think Twigs has a lot of those similar qualities. On top of that, she became far more expressive and lighthearted with her content with her mixtape Capri Songs. And I think that vibe and that whole makeup is something that will work so well with JPEG Mafia's current vibe. You listen to LP, he's going everywhere with it. Vocally, he's going so many places. Instrumentally, I think it would be a great landscape for Twigs to sing as well. I think he's improved his own singing, and I just think it would work. I think Peggy's rapping accompanied with Twigs' singing would spawn some of the most creative forms of expression we've seen in the last few decades. I do. The second collab album that I would love to see between 2 artists is Miguel and Tems. These have been 2 of my favorite singers for a while now. Tems a bit more recent, I think in the last 2.5 years. Miguel has been one of my favorite singers for the last decade and a half almost, who has such a colorful tone to his voice. I think he's made so much music as well in the last decade that has given me examples of lanes that I think he would sound best in. And I think one of Tems' strongest weapons in her arsenal is that she isn't rigid. Many of her best moments for me are moments that don't contain traditional song structure and are moments where she is instead just going on a track that may come across as fragmented because it doesn't have a standard verse, hook, verse type of setup, but she has the voice, vocal expression, and foresight to carry a track regardless of its lack of potential structure. A track like Free Mind is a big example of such, or even more so with the track Higher, where there really isn't a part of the song where you can predict vocally where she's gonna go. The way she handles her voice is almost the way I feel like people handle themselves when they're yawning and they do that stretch in the morning and they don't know exactly where their body's gonna go. That's how I feel like she handles her voice on a lot of the track, but the end result is that it ends up feeling good. Miguel, I think, could benefit from Tems' lack of quote-unquote structure in her music, because he is very standard and sometimes rigid in his approach to song structure. Even if he's a really great singer, I think he could benefit from some of the pros that Tems has to her music, and I would love to see what a world with the 2 of them together would sound like. I also think the backdrops that they have for the music that they put out is just so colorful that I need to be immersed into whatever world that they're going to create. Even though I know this collab is probably more on the unlikely side, I would still love to see it. Another unlikely duo that I'm not going to spend too much time on, but has given good examples of great music in the past, are Roddy Ricch and A Boogie. I know Roddy Ricch has been on kind of a downhill slope the past year and a half, but I still have hope for his abilities, and I think he's always sounded best regardless of when this downhill slope started, when he was with A Boogie. I think Boogie's melodies and the way he uses his voice are a really good and comfortable fit for Roddy as well, who kind of has a similar skill set, but I feel like can be carried when accompanied with someone who's a bit more consistent in that same lane. Maybe the music would be interesting, maybe not, but I do feel like it would be an interesting collab. The next one will be Smino and Tierra Whack. This is kind of a strange one because the music they make isn't at all similar in my opinion, but I think the flows that they explore and the way they both use their voice is equally playful, equally as youthful and creative. I also think some of their vocal inflections are pretty similar, so if they ever did collab and make music, I feel like they would use their voice in similar ways. The most recent track that Smino did release, I heard a lot of what I think would be Tierra Whack in that song. His playful style mixed with her usually playful production, I feel like would be a good mesh and a good world for the two to collaborate. I don't know why I would think it's the most entertaining thing in the world to hear a project between Boldy James and Larry June. Boldy just has such a dead style of delivering his raps to the songs that I would love to see him do that same style over production that features a much more bouncy West Coast feel from Larry June. I also think sometimes their voice can sound pretty similar, so I don't think that they will have a conflict meshing well on the same track. Similarly, there are other collabs that I think would sound great together as well, like Tyler the Creator and A$AP Rocky. A collab album from these two has to happen at some point. Potato Salad is still in rotation till this day, and I'm not going to stop playing it until they drop a release date. I would have loved to see Trippie Redd and Juice WRLD in the same way that I would have loved to see Anderson .Paak and Mac Miller. And a few that I think are interesting thoughts, but I think the ship has sailed on these potential duos are Kendrick and J. Cole, obviously, Drake and Kanye, Travis Scott and Future, even though I don't really have much hope for Future given that he doesn't give much to collab albums outside of that What a Time to Be Alive joint. Didn't think he was that entertaining with World on Drugs. Didn't think he was that entertaining on Baby Pluto and Pluto. Freddie Gibbs and Benny the Butcher is never happening. And as much as they'd gone back and forth in the past, I know this is an impossibility. There's a part of me that still wants to see a Gucci and Young Jeezy collab. I mean, anything is possible. They did a versus together. I could spend a long time trying to come up with the rest of these, but I do think I'm at my limit for right now. With this Drake and 21 Savage collab coming, I can only hope that they both sound great on each track. I know they're probably going to have their own individual tracks included. I hope the track list doesn't run beyond 12 tracks, and I also hope that we get some really entertaining and catchy hooks off of this thing. Not expecting it to be too bar heavy, and I do expect 21 to carry in the areas where Drake can't. That being said, I don't need for it to be only rap. 21 can still get into his R&B / romantic side. Big example of this being rich nigga shit as well. So if he gets into this bag, I'm not gonna be mad at it, and I hope it's gonna still be enjoyable. But y'all can let me know what you think the most likely outcome for this album will be, and don't forget again to include what your dream collab album would be. That's all I got. I should be in town Friday to listen to the album along with everyone else. I'll see you next time.